Good. Okay, welcome back to the Perspectives in Rural Education podcast. It's been a little bit, but today we have Caleb Will with us on the podcast. And so welcome, and go ahead and tell us what school district you're in and what your position is.
All right, well, thanks for inviting me on here. I'm Caleb Will. I am the Dean of Students at Palestine High School. I'm about finished with my principal certificate to then transition from dean to principal, but yes, I'm here in Palestine, which is like an hour south of Charleston.
Very cool. That's one thing I was going to ask you is like, what's the difference between a dean of students and a principal?
Same position. You have to get the principal certificate to be considered a principal. And I'm sure some schools prefer that extra endorsement saying you pass the two certification tests. Maybe people can negotiate for different contracts that way, but it was a way for me to get my foot in the door while I was finishing my degree and everything. So
that makes sense. So when did you first realize you wanted to pursue a career in education?
Well, I knew in high school, I really liked mathematics. I really had some wonderful high school mathematics teachers. I grew up in Newton, Illinois, and I thought I would be really good at it. But my idea was I'm going to go to college, be an engineer, make a lot of money. And then I noticed that I didn't enjoy that at all. After a year and a half, I decided to talk to counselors at EIU. I changed majors to accounting because, hey, let's try to make more money still. And thankfully at EIU, they sent me to job shadow, and I hated it because there was no interactions with people. And I realized after a year and a half, I needed to do what I wanted to do, and it was teach high school mathematics. So that's how I got into education.
Very cool. And so you didn't come from a family of educators?
I have an aunt that taught high school mathematics. I have a couple elementary aunts. So I had some education around there, but my dad works at the power plant. My mom works at a government office in town. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like following their footsteps, more or less.
Yeah, that's cool. And so you started your first job. What school district were you in for your first job?
Well, I graduated in Eastern in May 2014. And whenever I was looking for my first job, the market wasn't what it is now. Mm-hmm. I feel like if you're an educator, you can almost say, hey, this is what I want. Please hire me, because that's why, instead of me fighting for the same position. So I applied to 3 different schools. I did interviews at all 3, and I took the first one that called. And Palestine is the first one to call and say, hey, we have a position. We'd love to have you. So it was great. I loved my first year. That was August of 2014. Palestine is a very small school. We have about 100 kids in the high school. We've actually had a few less, but we're working on regrowing. But I mean, my average class size was 12 students.
Wow.
I had a pre-calculus with 8 students. I had an algebra class with 18 or 20. And it was great. I also had no repetitive courses throughout the day. So I had 6 different preps. I admit my first year, I was very tired and stressed because I wanted to do the job right. And I wanted to make sure I came prepared. But I enjoyed it. I really did. And even then, 6 years of teaching mathematics, no continued classes. Everything was different. So every day was fun. And at a small school, they said, would you like to be a coach? And I didn't think you could say no, but I also wanted that aspect of hanging out with my students and finding other ways to build those relationships. So I was a coach for basketball for 3 years. I coached track for 6 years, and I did cross country for a few years. So that was great. And they said, would you want to be a class sponsor? Sure. Again, we have a small school, so we about had everyone in those positions. And they said, would you like to be student senate advisor with one of our veteran teachers? Sure. And then that teacher retired a year later. And then they said, have you thought about doing academic challenges like ACEs or math team? I said, sure. And then they lastly said, what about a bus license? Because we're kind of in a shortage. And I said, sure. So Mr. Coach Teacher Bus Driver Will was my title for a long time.
That's crazy. I would love to know, like, you know, when you're approached and they're asking you to do all these things, and for some of them you've had experiences, but others you haven't, how do you like step into those roles with confidence, or like, what did that look like for you?
I think that's kind of how I got to this position today as Dean of Students. A lot of it was confidence. A lot of it was just natural leadership ability. I enjoyed being in those roles. So I didn't play track in high school. I didn't play basketball in high school, but I never was the head coach the first year. I always try to either transition that way or just stay as assistant. But you just did it with confidence. I'm a continual learner. I want to be a part of it. So track is a little easier if you say, hey, next time run a little faster. Sometimes that works. But then, of course, I actively pursued professional development, or I got the people around me. I mean, driving a bus, I was on a small farm growing up, so I wasn't scared of larger equipment, but I saw a need. I mean, sure, I got paid a little bit more because I'm now driving a bus, but it was also cool to say, I'm now, again, Mr. Coach Teacher Bus Driver.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. And so can you talk a little bit about rural education? And you grew up in Newton, which is a pretty small area. How did that, was your plan to stay in rural school districts, or what did that look like?
So I thought about coming to Palestine for at least 3 to 5 years just to get my feet wet. Again, small school, kind of honing on my skills. My initial thought was to look for either something closer to home, maybe back in Newton, maybe look for something closer to I've got some family in the St. Louis area. So I had a 3 to 5 year plan, but I really love the rural education setting. Again, small classes. I know about every student and about every parent. I'm not bored with the same education. I wish I had, 10 math teachers to collaborate with and make cool ideas, but I kind of liked working with one other math teacher, and we could kind of see what's best for us. I felt close with the community. If we volunteered for Labor Day, we have a big rodeo in Palestine, so I volunteered for that. We had a Tipsy Pig Festival. I mean, I'm just all part of a different. I feel like I'm part of the community rather than just, he teaches there. And he's a member of. So I love the rural setting.
Yeah, that's such a good explanation of the benefit of being a part of the community and the school.
Yeah.
So you were a teacher in high school, right? Like high school students?
Yes.
And I think that for a lot of people who are subbing or even going into education, high schoolers are very intimidating. And so could you just speak to that? Like, what are some of the benefits and the challenges of being at the high school level?
I would say benefits are a lot of that assumed knowledge. Like they're old enough to know better. Specifically academically, like I was very thankful I didn't have to teach a kid how to add or subtract, because as a teacher, that would be difficult for me. I feel like they're also emotionally mature, so they understand social cues for the most part. Again, they're high schoolers. As a teacher, it took building that respect with them. So then I didn't feel worried if I left for a sub to come in, because they knew what I expected, and that translated to what the sub would come in on. As an administrator, I'm still trying to build a strong culture, and I think we have one here, but I'm still trying to build it with our high school students, so then they understand what is our pioneer way, what is the way you should act respectfully, responsibly. And I have some really good subs that like to come in and they continually say, hey, your kids were awesome. And that means a lot to me, but I can understand high schoolers are intimidating. The challenges I see are motivation as a teacher. How do you get them interested, especially when there's so many distractions, mostly on a cell phone? And then, I mean, some kids don't value respect immediately, but especially if it's a sub that's not coming quite a bit. A lot of mine are continual subs, but you got to show the kids you care, lay the ground rules, and then it's usually pretty self-explanatory there. They kind of follow what's supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like what you're saying too about how you're developing a culture where the kids value respect. And I think that for subs too, that's really important that they're coming in and having good experiences, because I've heard of subs they come, they have one bad experience and they don't go back to that school, or they don't sub at that level anymore because of that. So I think that's definitely important.
Yeah, there's definitely a sub shortage. So if you have a bad experience, come back, I'm going to be hurting out. So whether I need to go into the classroom and say, hey, here's our sub for the day, or do continually pop-ins. But again, I had this rapport with some of our continued subs. I don't have to do that as much.
Yeah. So can you talk about the transition from teaching into administration? Was that always the plan, or what's that process been like?
It was not in my 5-year plan, but that changed. After my 4th year, I decided to get my master's, but I thought about doing it in mathematics. I was trying to get dual credits, or master's in mathematics to teach dual credits. I'm sure bump up my pay, but then also give more to our school. So I began that process, and I was only going in the summers, and it's taking my time. Things are great. And my principal at the time, Miss Waldrop, she's incredible. She retired now. Big supporter of me and always tried to encourage me. And I appreciated her so much, but she's like, I see leadership in you. You've done all these different things. You should consider getting your master's in educational leadership. And she showed me EIU's cohort. She was getting emails, take this, start working on that. I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. I probably should. Our superintendent at the time nudged me in that direction too. So I had a lot of support from colleagues that I had high respect for. And so I began that. I worked on my math master's in the summer. I started the cohort in the fall and the spring, and I did 2 classes at a time. And then I realized our principal was retiring, and I saw what it would take for me to get done right when she retired. So I paused my math master's and I accelerated my educational leadership. So I was able to finish the July of last year whenever she officially retired, and then I officially got my degree. So I was able to be a dean of students and have my master's in educational leadership. So to begin the process was support from the previous administration, and then it just kept going from there.
Mm-hmm. And so now that you finished that, you still have to get, did you say your certificate to be a principal? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have the degree. I am a dean of students. I'm very legal in all sense, but I want that principal certificate saying, after going through all these classes, here are the 2 tests I passed. You are now a principal in the state of Bisbee. So
that makes sense. And so I feel like I wouldn't know that unless I went through the process. Did you know all of that before, or you've kind of just been learning as you go?
I did not know it all. Man, there's a few advisors and professors that were wonderful during this cohort. And how it was shaped was I met at either only or Eastern 4 times in a quarter or 4 times in a semester. And we had, 4-hour discussions, 3-hour discussions, depending on what was going on. And it was great. They lined out what was expected of me. You write a few papers between our 2 meetings, and then we did some more education discussion. And every one of those professors had previous dean of students, or principal or superintendent. And those were the conversations I valued the most, just because, hey, this is how I learned. This is how I did it. Okay, here's the bullet points. This is what you guys need to do. You need to pass these classes in this order. You need to get your certificate. You need to make sure you sign up online, so then you'll be accredited by the state. So the process was very simple because of some wonderful people there.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. I think when you can learn from people's experiences rather than just lectures all the time or something like that.
And now in that cohort, I have 16 other colleagues I can reach out on and say, hey, how's your first year going? Or, oh my gosh, I had this situation on vaping. Like, what do you guys do? It's really nice because in this profession, we're not alone. Someone's probably already experienced something that I haven't, or vice versa. Maybe I've done something that maybe I struggled with or was really good at. Hey, here's how we do it. So whether it's connections via email, I'm on a couple of Facebook groups that are principals, and I've seen cool ideas on Teacher Appreciation Week or summer programs. I'm really glad of a network. Gotta have a network.
Yeah, I've heard that from Angie Gentry. I think she's over at Arcola, and she was talking about the elementary principal network that she started and how beneficial it's been to be able to talk to other people who are in the same position at different schools and how they're handling things. So I definitely think that's important. Since it's summer, can you talk about what is it like to work at a school in the summer, which I know it's different if you're a teacher probably versus an administrator. What are the differences? Do teachers really get their summers off? Because I think that's a big draw to the field. People are like, oh, I want to be a teacher because I get the summer off. But do you really get the summer off?
Right. I have a family member that's like, oh man, you have 2 months off. You don't get to do anything. That's not the case. As a teacher, I definitely took time to relax and recover. I did a lot of reflection just because it's important to try to grow on your program and your curriculum. But I mean, as a teacher, I would always spend a week or 2 at least in the building, in my classroom, whether it's reorganizing, whether it was fixing lessons that I didn't like, or revamping lessons. So I was definitely busy, especially too if I was doing student senate. I tried to get some things organized there. If I was coaching, I tried to do some things there. So yes, summers are off. Yes, you should take as much time as you need, but you're not going to not be away from the building all 2 months long if you want to be really good at the job. Mm-hmm. As an administrator, I work every day. The majority of the time, I am trying to prepare for the next school year. I've tried updating our registration process or cleaning up freshman orientation. I'm trying to fill out some grants because it's great to have some free money to update, whether it's safety and security or technology. I'm trying to prepare a Google Drive for all of my staff, so all the information is found in one place. So say you're looking for the master schedule, or you're looking for our bell schedule, or you're looking for contact information. Okay, go to the 2022-2023 Google Drive. So I stay busy. But a former administrator gave me some wonderful advice. He said, there are no awards given to the principal who works every day over the summer. So you don't need to be here every time. We're given several days, weeks off as vacation days for a reason. So I will be taking some time off to relax and recover and unwind or visit family. So I didn't feel comfortable last year doing it as my first summer, and I was definitely busy, and I'm still hesitant. I've taken several days, or I've already scheduled several days, but I want to make sure everything's perfect for next year. But even if I don't get it done in that time, I know I can during the school year. So very busy, always something going on. Make sure my advice to anybody is take your time off to recover, whether you go anywhere or not, especially with, $5.25 gas or whatever it is.
Right. Yes. That's such a good point. The balance, the work-life balance. I didn't put this on the list of questions, but you mentioned technology earlier. And so, you graduated EIU in 2014. And so you probably grew up maybe a little bit with technology, right? Like probably high school, and so what is it like, I guess, to be an administrator in a school and to kind of understand how these kids have grown up with tablets in front of them, phones in front of them? How do you manage that?
Well, I was on the tail end. We didn't have one-to-ones when I was in high school.
Right.
But now we are a one-to-one school, especially after everything that happened with COVID. It's been helpful to assign things. I feel comfortable being able to assist students and teachers growing up in it on any questions and needs. So I feel like I've tried to make things more efficient, but I still think it's going to be important for us to not be one-to-one all the time in the classroom. So I'm so happy to walk into a math classroom and there's no Chromebook most of the time, or even in English. It's really easy to write papers. I'm glad to have, pencil to paper that way. So we're not staring at a screen, because the next thing we're going to have to do is issue out Palestine Pioneer blue light glasses if we're going to be on Chromebooks all the time. So I'm glad to be around the technology. It's wonderful. It allows us to do so many great things, but we should still stress there's time to be away from it to learn hands-on in a different manner.
Yeah. And then this also wasn't a question on here, but I was thinking of it as we were talking. You mentioned that your wife is a school counselor.
That's right.
I've talked about this with Andy Johnson before. His wife is a teacher and he's in administration. How do you come home at the end of the day? And you both know what it's like to be in the schools right now, like with COVID and everything else. How do you come home and talk about it, but also, live your lives and talk about other things?
It is very hard not to have an education conversation at the end of the day at some point. So whether it's an email that shows up or a situation that happened at school, I'm glad I'm glad to have someone that understands my situation, so I can go home and say, oh my gosh, this was the crazy day. And she most likely helped me get through it. So, but we do a very good job of trying to leave it at school, whether we go out to eat or we're sitting at home and just kind of staying away, but it's hard not to have conversations on it. So, I'm very thankful that she understands and is very, as the counselor, she's very understanding, very caring, and helps me get through situations, and then vice versa. I hope I can too, but it's different for us. We're neighbors now, but half of the day she's at the grade school. So we're so small, or we are small enough to use our guidance counselor both for the high school and grade school. So we're not always next to each other.
Yeah.
So there are things that catch up on our work days that don't relate exactly what's going on in our building. But it's nice to have someone that understands everything going on. But we do have to actively try to find something, whether it's watching Stranger Things or going to go get tacos somewhere.
Some space. I think that's so relevant, because I think that a lot of people in education are married to people that are also in education.
Yep.
And so I've always wondered, how does that work where you relate, but you don't talk about it all the time?
Yeah.
So looking ahead to your future in administration and in the school district, what are some goals or visions that you have for the future?
Well, there's a lot of goals that I'd like to fix academically. We have an RTI program. I think it needs updated, whether it's finding professional development for me to search for or bring in. I always think there's ways to remediate education there. I think parent involvement is so important, and I think we've grown a lot throughout this year, but I want to create or restructure our parent involvement group so they can be a part of it. So those are some goals. I want to do either monthly or every 2 months, have a community outreach thing where I want the community to come in and we can have sessions held by our teachers where we teach them how to use our Teacher Ease program. This is our grading program, or here's Google Education. And then also bring people in from the bank to talk to kids and parents, like this is the importance of saving, or this is FAFSA education. I want to try somehow bring in more students parents to the building, so then they can see how things are going. They can also grow and then be invested. I want to improve our safety and security. I know things have been going on for years now, and we're always improving. We have a fob system, but I want more fobs, or any way I can help us feel more comfortable and safe. Our building is built in like the 1900s, so it's old, early 1900s. So we've been doing some restructure and tuck pointing to make sure everything's good. So academic growth there. I've got parental involvement. I want to secure our building for anything like that. We're trying to incorporate AP courses into our curriculum. So we have teachers that are interested that want to help teach dual credits there. So I've got a lot of goals. I think it's important for any educator, administrator to make a list of 1, 5, 10-year goals and make sure you're always trying to pursue them in some manner. So it's good to reflect on those. What's nice about the ESSER funding and the financial benefits that the federal government has given to us, we've been able to do a lot of those things. So we bought new Chromebooks. We did some tuck pointing on the school. So now how do we keep going? There's always ways to improve. So
yeah. That's so cool. What is a piece of advice that you could give to other educators? Or you mentioned earlier that you've had a lot of great mentors and support. And so maybe a piece of advice that they gave you that you would like to share with others.
I've kind of said it a little bit already, but you have to value relationships and find valuable relationships. Relationships are the key to education, whether it's students trying to learn from teachers. If they don't respect or have a relationship in a professional manner, they struggle learning. So that was the most important. How many people come into college and say, man, I love my mathematics teacher. I love learning mathematics. It's not the most related thing to say. So my goal was to make my students invested in me because I was invested in them. So then we can learn together. So and same thing as an administrator, I need to be invested and have relationships with my staff members, professional, of course. So then they know I care, and then they care and they put more into it. I have relationships with my administrators in the district, in the county. I mean, now on Facebook. So relationships are the key to success because that's how you grow. That's how you show caring. That's the biggest piece of advice. Don't be afraid of asking for help.
I agree, especially within rural education where, like you said, all the students you have and their parents, like all of those relationships are so crucial too. And because the school district is so small, you're going to be interacting with all the teachers. And so it is important to put effort and attention into those relationships. Do you have any impactful stories about students, or it could be an experience you had with a student as a teacher or as an administrator, anything?
So I was thinking about this question, and I enacted something this year. I called them end of first quarter interviews. So I interviewed every student. Now at a school of 1,000 kids, probably not possible, but at a school with 85 students, I could do it. And whether it was pulling them out of our RTI or at the end of a class, I'd walk around the school and I'd say, hey, you're not working on something, come in. And I asked them to do a few different things. I asked them to rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 on their academics, what they thought their academics were, on their motivation, on their perseverance. I then asked them a list of questions pertaining to their favorite moments in high school so far, or what does it mean to be a pioneer, or suggestions to make the school better, things they're proud of, their future plans. So I was able to meet with every student. And that was such a cool experience because I didn't know some of these kids were interested in welding. Okay, now that I know that, let's push them in that direction. I didn't know some of these kids felt like they didn't have a connection with anything in school, like nothing's fun, I don't enjoy this. Okay, how can I then direct them to the right people, or how can I then mentor them throughout? I also did the exit interviews with every senior toward at the end of the year. Now that we talked first quarter, how did they grow to the end of the year? And now here are your plans. I said, you can't just look past summer, or you can't stop looking past summer. Like a lot of kids said, I'm going on vacation, that's it. And then I said, what's next? And some of them had plans, some of them didn't. So I thought those conversations were really cool. So if you can do that in any school, I would do either exit interviews or quarter conversations. You can have some sort of quirky name with it. And being from a rural school, a small school, I had that ability to make that possible with every student. And I'm going to keep those forever.
Yeah. And like, I'm sure the feedback you got was so helpful, because I feel like there's a lot of interaction between like the school boards, administrators, but it's not very often that you actually just ask the kids, like, what's your experience been? Or what do you like? What do you not like about school? And like, how can we help you learn and grow?
I showed every one of the seniors, I said, this is the mission statement. Do you know what that is? And they're like, I've never seen that. I'm like, it's in the front of the handbook. So did we meet the mission of the school? And they're like, the school has a mission? I'm like, yeah. So these are conversations that they didn't know. And we were able to kind of grow a little bit. So hopefully then as they become parents, they're like, oh yeah, school has a mission, and let's see if they're reaching it or not. So it was really cool. And I'm going to keep those every year. So then if I talk to a freshman this year and they come to senior, you said you wanted to be the welder. What are you interested in now? Or you said you hated high school. How are your thoughts still? Or you told me you didn't like grilled cheese. I'm sorry I couldn't get rid of it. Okay. That's the thing. So
that is awesome.
But that's the benefit of a small school, a rural education.
True. So true. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. It has been so encouraging to hear kind of your vision for the school district and just your desire to learn, and how that is probably trickling down to your teachers and to the students. And it's going to be like a legacy for that school, like because of your leadership. And so I think that's really awesome. And it was funny because at the beginning you were talking about your 5-year plan and how it didn't pan out the way you thought, but you were talking about how like looking forward, you think that there needs to be like, a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, like these goals set out, because then you have something you're striving for. And so I just think that's a lesson for everybody, like listening, like have a plan. And if it doesn't go like you thought, it's still great to have goals and like desires too.
I think 1, 5, 10-year plans are so important, because then you're looking ahead, but man, it's okay if they change. That's great. I mean, we have a teacher that is very non-traditional. They had a job for 15, 16 years out at a business, and then they did something else for a few years, and they're like, man, I really wanted to be a teacher. So they teach our CTE program for business and computers, and they're wonderful, like a natural teacher. But that goes to show they probably had a 1, 10, 15-year plan that probably wasn't to be a teacher. And now things have adjusted, and they seem very happy. And it's cool. Make a plan, but be willing to change and grow. I love it.